Basil's lifetime was cast in one of those periods exceptionally disastrous to the Church, when shipwrecks of faith are common, because darkness prevails to such an extent as to cast its shades even over the children of light. A period, in fact, when, as St. Jerome expresses it, the astonished world waked up to bewail itself Arian. Bishops were faltering in essentials of true belief and in questions of loyalty to the successor of Peter, so that the bewildered flock scarce knew whose voice to follow. For many of their pastors, some through perfidy and some through weakness, had subscribed at Rimini to the condemnation of the faith of Nicaea. Basil himself was assuredly not one of them, not one of those blind watchmen, dumb dogs not able to bark. When but a simple lector, he had not hesitated to sound the horn of alarm by openly separating himself from his bishop, who had been caught in the meshes of the Arians. And now himself a bishop, he boldly showed that he was so indeed, for when entreated, for peace's sake, to make some compromise with the Arians, vain was every supplication, every menace of confiscation, exile, or death. Athanasius, who had led the battles of the first half of that century and had conquered Arius, was no more. He had gone to join in the well-merited repose of eternity his brave companions, Eusebius of Vercelli and Hilary of Poitiers. In the midst of the confusion that Valens' persecution was then reproducing in the East, even holy men knew not how to weather the storm. From this ship in distress, as he termed the Eastern Church, dashing against every rock amid the dense fog, his pressing cry of appeal reached the ears of the Western Church, seated in peace in her unfailing light, reached Rome, whence alone help could come, yet whose wise slowness, on one occasion, made him almost lose heart. While awaiting the intervention of Peter's successor, Basil prudently repressed anything like untimely zeal and, for the present, required of weak souls merely what was indispensable in matters of faith. Just as under other circumstances and with equal prudence he had severely reproved his own brother, St. Gregory of Nyssa, for suffering himself to be betrayed by simplicity into inconsiderate measures, motived indeed by love of peace. Peace, yes, this is just what Basil desired as much as anybody. But the peace for which he would give his life could be only that true peace left to the Church by our Lord. What he so vigorously exacted on the grounds of faith proceeded slowly from this very love of his for peace. And therefore, as he himself tells us, he absolutely refused to enter into communion with men of just medium, men who dread nothing so much as a clear, close-drawn expression of dogma. In his eyes, their captious formulae and ungraspable shiftings were but the action of hypocrites, in whose company he would scorn to approach God's altar. As to those merely misled, let the faith of our fathers be proposed to them with all tenderness and charity. If they will assent thereunto, let us receive them into our midst. In other cases, let us dwell with ourselves alone, regardless of numbers. And let us keep aloof from equivocating souls who are not possessed of that simplicity without guile indispensably required in the early days of the gospel from all who would approach to the faith. The believers, so it is written, had but one heart and one soul. Let those, therefore, who would reproach us for not desiring pacification mark well who are the real authors of the disturbance, and so not point the question of reconciliation on our side any more. In Part 2, we will continue Dom Gueranger's entry on St. Basil the Great.